Hi, my name is Susan Stotterell, and I'm going to be your host for Beyond the Books, The Language of Success, an interdisciplinary podcast on child and adult literacy. Thank you for joining us. Today, my guest on Beyond the Books podcast is children's writer June Akers. And she has been a teacher, and she writes a children's book series called Riley Madison. And they deal a lot with issues that children growing up might have, particularly having to do with being able to learn and read. So this is June Akers, and I'm going to ask her to tell us her background.
Absolutely. So I am a elementary education. That is where I have a degree in. I've been a teacher for over 20 years, and I've had the privilege of teaching first, third, fifth, and seventh graders. So I'm kind of the odd teacher with all those odd years. I have children have just they're my heart, they're my passion. Whenever I'm surrounded by a bunch of kids, it is my happy place. We're going to talk about the importance of reading and having that teacher experience. I have seen how reading affects the kids. Being a teacher later on in the years, in seventh grade, I actually was a seventh grade reading teacher, and I will talk to you more about what I did as a seventh grade reader teacher, because seventh grade reading teacher, because it really has a lot to do with these children that hadn't learned how to read. And so that is kind of my background. I also am a mom of four kids. I have a daughter who is 18. She is the inspiration for Riley Madison, which we're going to be talking about. When she was little, we had a lot of things we had to work on because she was so high on the charts with ADHD. So I am a big proponent of skills before pills. And let me just say, I am so thankful for medicine, and I'm so thankful for doctors and how far they have come with helping these children whose brains really do work differently and do need some help. But I do believe in developing the skills and trying to work that into your child's life to see if that might be what can get them on track before going to medicine. So that's actually where the book stemmed from. That Riley and I worked on her skills in elementary school, and she called them her superpowers because my little girl was able to get through elementary school just by using her superpower skills that we write about in the stories. And then I also have three little boys. My oldest son is 15, and he's a freshman in high school. And my middle son is 11. He is in sixth grade. And then my youngest, my little tag along, is Xander, and he is a 4-year-old. He's four. He's a 4-year-old
Wow,
in
you
preschool.
got them spread out there.
Yes, they had to be like potty trained before I was ready for another one. So
So anyway, while you were speaking about ADHD, I went for a physical yesterday at my doctor's, and they asked me all these questions, and it was a nurse that asked like 500 questions, and she had ADHD, and we're talking about the cell phones. And she says, now I should be having my focus over here. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. But I really want to look. No, I'm supposed to be here. And she did this kind of almost comic routine. And it was really, really interesting because it reminded me exactly of what you had said about it. And
sure, right. And that's just where, you have to put those skills in place even as an adult. Like, a lot of times adults, they don't get on the ADHD medicine anymore, or they like wean themselves off of it because they're older, they're more mature. We statistics show that children that have ADHD are actually around 30% behind socially than the average child. And so that even affects them on up 18 years old. They're still kind of like, they're still younger. And so as they get older though, when you really get those skills in place, you can sometimes, not everybody, but a lot a lot of people do work really hard on those skills and they don't need the medicine anymore because they're so disciplined with their skills. And so, for an example, with that phone, I have ADHD too. So, if my phone is driving me crazy, I will go put the phone in a drawer. If I'm really trying to focus on something that needs to be focused on, I will put it in a drawer or, put it somewhere that I won't be able to see it and be constantly distracted. So again, just another skill of you got to be disciplined when you have ADHD, and even if you don't have ADHD, those phones drive us crazy, right? with
Oh,
all that,
yes.
with all the
I could do
distractions.
without them, you know?
Yes. And with that, they are actually learning that they're having all the symptoms, most of the symptoms that children who have been diagnosed with ADHD have. That's how it's affecting their brain. The attention span, which that's the big thing about ADHD, it's attention deficit. That's the first two letters. And so the attention span is really, really being affected. And then also adults are too. We're losing our attention span as well. Like even like television shows and people that are doing movies are really having to like kind of redo how they do television shows and putting the screen and
Right.
different angles and stuff because even adults are we don't have the attention span that we should have because we are being affected by all of this technology that's hitting us and immediate entertainment. And so yes, it's our world is really affecting not only children, but everyone, adults as well.
Oh, definitely. And this young lady that I was talking about, she was not diagnosed until she was 23. She seems pretty sure of herself, but I also think about how these kids, the self-esteem, because I was putting my grocery cart back, and these two boys were out there picking up the baskets to take them back into the store, and this one boy said, I am so stupid. I can't believe how stupid I am. And they were talking about some war, and he confused the American Revolution with the Civil War. He could not interchange them because he was trying to
Mhm.
talk about the American Revolution, but he kept calling
Mhm.
it the Civil War. And I
Mhm.
said, you're not stupid. You just haven't been learning correctly. Don't you ever let anybody tell you you're stupid. That was me out in the parking lot.
Aw, yeah.
I stuck my
Yes.
nose right in because I just can't stand. And I thought how he hates himself. And obviously, he's got some sort of learning disability. I don't know what it is. He might be dyslexic. Oh, she was also
Yes.
dyslexic, the woman. She was dyslexic and had ADHD and
Wow.
still really functioning. So somewhere along the way, she learned her skills.
She mastered those skills, absolutely. And she's older. Do you happen to know about how old this nurse was?
Well, she said I found out when I was 23. She was not, she certainly wasn't over 30. She was pretty young.
Got it. Okay. So, with me, I didn't realize I had it either until I was older and I started learning about children and doing my psychology classes. Um, and I think one of the things that I realized that I didn't struggle with it as much as children do nowadays because I didn't have a
Distraction.
phone in front of my face all the time. And even in the classroom, it wasn't, and I love technology, being a teacher. It's got some of the coolest things that it's helped our classrooms be so much more fun. But I'm a big believer in there needs to be a balance in everything. And so I just feel like I'm 44, so this was years ago. Well, it's been a few years.
Not as many
Um,
as mine.
but, back then, I think it was easier to go undiagnosed because we didn't have even more distractions going on. And I remember I had wonderful teachers that helped me, with my organizing and stuff, and it was fantastic. And then I even started realizing these kids, and this was in middle school, these kids that are constantly talking around me, they were some of my best friends, but I was like, I can't learn around my best friend. So I would move to the very front, and that's where I needed to be so I
That's a
could
good idea.
focus. And so I just started kind of learning these skills kind of on my own. And then I realized if I don't write stuff down, it will not happen. And it wasn't that I didn't mean for it to, because I worked really hard to be a good student. And so when you're talking about their about their self-esteem, that is a big deal because I would get so frustrated with myself and be like, what is wrong with me? Like, why can't I remember, like, these other kids, they don't write anything down and they're making straight A's, and I had to be very diligent, and if this is what we had to do, I was writing it down, otherwise I would forget. It would completely it's out of sight, out of mind. So,
Yeah.
just really learning those skills. And even today, if you tell me something and I need to remember, I will say, hang on, wait a minute, I've got to write this down. Or even my children, I will say, all right, put a sticky note on the fridge for mom, or let me write it down, right now. Or because I want to be successful in life. I don't want to keep forgetting. And that kind of stems where the first book comes from. With my daughter, she in school, she was actually getting very disappointed in herself. She was getting to where she didn't want to go to school because she's incredibly smart. Like, this girl is in the tag classes. She scored crazy scores on her SATs. Like, the learning was easy for her, but just the remembering to get the work done or turn her work in, or that is where she struggled. Or if their teacher gave them several things they needed to do, she wouldn't remember all of them.
Mm.
She would start on number one, and then sometimes she would get distracted and not even finish, number
Yeah.
one. But like, when she was listening class, like, she would know everything that teacher said. She loved learning. So then we kind of figured out, okay, what's going on with my Riley girl? Like, what can we do to help her be more successful in school? Because the teacher was calling me, and well, let's let her make a list. And so on her desk, she would write down what she was supposed to be doing. We had a little list, and so she had to go over and check it off as she got her things done. And even if she got distracted, that list would bring her back into focus. Like, even if she started talking to a little friend or something, she would go to her desk and see that bright, colored little sticky note, and she would be like, "Oh yeah, that's what I need to do." And so that is the first book. It's the Riley Madison Superpower of a List. And then when my little girl started doing that, she was proud of herself. Like, she's like, "Mom, I remembered everything, and my teacher did not have to get on to me today," and she felt so proud. And then the cutest thing was, and so other little kids in her class started making their little list, and the teacher was like, "My classroom, it her class
Changed.
became more successful,"
Yeah.
so learning those skills, and that actually builds their self-esteem, their self-confidence. Of course, comparing ourselves to anybody, that's a sad way. We don't need to do the whole comparison thing, because we are all uniquely and wonderfully made.
Yeah.
And we all have our own special gifts and stuff. But when you're little, you don't really know all that yet. Another thing that's really interesting is I did not tell my daughter she had ADHD until fifth grade, because we have a son that is hearing impaired, so he wears hearing aids. Because of being a teacher, I've had children that were used ADHD as a crutch. They knew they had it, and they would come up and be like, "You need to give me half the work," or "You need to," or "I don't
Oh,
have to do this
Lord.
because I have ADHD." And and,
That is so funny.
right? No, they would. They totally would. And
I believe it.
yeah, so they took advantage of it. And you want to be careful with that, because I want kids to continue to have that rigor. And just because you have something that is more challenging for you doesn't mean we just try to get away with get away with things. But you want to push through. Like, I might have to work a little harder than everybody else, but I'm going to get there, and not try to just get out of things. And so that was the reason we did not tell her that she had ADHD until fifth grade. And so we sat down with her and we said, "Hey, Riley, we want to, share with you, anyways, I won't tell you the whole story, but we let her know she had ADHD, and we kind of explained it very similar to her little brother who wears his hearing aids. And we said, just like your little brother wears hearing aids and he needs a little extra help to be able to hear, you have been diagnosed with ADHD." She started crying because she was like, "There is
That's
something
why.
that's why I struggle so much, and that's why I have to work harder than other kids to, like, get my assignments done, and, like, she was relieved that there was actually a reason, that she knew why her little brain worked differently and how she and I just feel like, when you're talking about ADHD in children, we all have things that we have to overcome. Some kids
Right.
wear glasses, like my son, he
Yeah,
wears
for
hearing
reading.
aids.
I can see otherwise, but reading I have.
Yeah, and so it's not necessarily a terrible thing. Well, actually, for a lot of kids that have it, they are brilliant. Like, they are some of your most creative people. They're typically off the charts,
Right.
ridiculously smart, but
Yes.
they just can't, like, focus all the time, or they can't remember, but once they do get focused, man, you usually see some amazing things. That's where we got the superpowers, coming on, with these kids. With the second book, we teach kids the children and adults, even if you have ADHD or not, we have time blindness. Sometimes there are people who do not know how to manage their time, and
I was while you were talking, let's see, I was thinking the things that I have mentioned, like writing things down, I always did that naturally.
mhm,
Nobody told me to take notes or anything, but I found early on that if I wrote something down, I remembered it.
mm,
You know, the other thing I
sure.
was thinking about while you were talking too was something that I just wrote a blog on standardized testing, and they mentioned,
Actually, testing more kids were testing into the tag program later in the school year, and we especially saw that with our children that weren't from homes that maybe were as supportive and stuff, and so we learned that it's the environment. Sure, you have some DNA that makes up, it helps you with your high IQ or being intelligent or whatever. But actually, one of the things that really brings that all around is having just an amazing environment. I feel like your heart is with literacy. And we also find that those children that are just exposed to books constantly, even from like a baby, like seeing those pictures and your mom reading to you or
oh
dad,
yes,
grandma, whoever.
that's one type of literacy, the emerging.
Yes.
And if that doesn't
Mhm.
happen, and it's like in homes that are either where the parents don't speak English or
Mhm.
there is no their parents may not even read very well. I mean, they
Uh-huh.
could be totally English speaking and still not know any vocabulary. By the
Right.
time those kids go to school, they're way behind.
They are.
Now,
Mhm.
what would make that better is if we had universal pre-K at a very high level. One other thing I wanted to ask you is how do you, yeah, I know you're a classical pianist, and do you think that playing the piano helped you with your ADHD? Because it teaches discipline for
It
sure.
does. And you have
And
to
let's face
be
it, if you don't practice right, it doesn't ever come out right.
right. Yes, you are exactly right. You have to get, they call it muscle memory in those fingers, especially to play the bop and and
Oh
all
yeah.
those pieces. Because you actually can't read the notes as fast as you
No, I mean
actually
it
need to
has to go
play
into
them.
your memory. Yeah.
Yes.
Or
So
A Chopin run, like
yes. Oh my
in the
goodness.
concertos. Oh my god.
Yeah, you just basically have to memorize that mess.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
one thing I am really, although I have an excellent memory for remembering facts, I can remember all of my research for this, that, and the other,
Mhm.
years back, you know. But can I remember a piano piece? I used to be terrified to go play recitals because I couldn't remember the piece. We never know what we're going to end up doing. If you
Mhm.
had told me that I was going to end up being a composer and writing librettos and art songs for full orchestra and, making up the story, doing it all, I would have said, you are absolutely insane.
Mhm.
And especially where I came from. But those little piano lessons that I took were the basis.
I wanna piggyback around with, like, the music. You asked me about being a classical pianist. Was it difficult for me with ADHD?
I think perhaps it helped you learn these coping skills that got you
'Cause
as
you had
far
to
as
be
you went.
disciplined? Yeah, I don't have time to go into all of it, but music is one of the things that can actually really be beneficial for children learning how to read. There's a lot of stuff that goes into
Oh,
that with making your brain, you're making, the creative stuff is going on. The notes line up. We read from left to right. You're learning letters when you're, putting them with the notes. There's a lot of great stuff that learning music helps children do.
I did some further research on what June said last week about the connection between learning music and learning to read. On the edutopia.org site, there was an article entitled Music Training Can Be a Literacy Superpower. Here are some of the anecdotes I found helpful. Music training improves the process of reading, first by sharpening the brain's attention to sound. As a child learns to read and play or sing specific notes, the brain's ability to separate parallel units of sound that make up words, called phonemes, become more acute, says neurobiologist Nina Kraus, author of Sound Mind and How Our Brain Constructs a Meaningful Sonic World. 2 decades ago, the Harmony Project set out to bring high quality music instruction to kids living in some of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Los Angeles. Although the 5 hours per week of instrumental instruction and mentoring began as a K through 12 violence prevention intervention, teachers soon noticed significant improvements in students' academic lives. Students' grades were going up, not a little, but a lot. Those who entered the program barely speaking English were earning A's and enrolling in AP English classes a few years later. Kids who stuck with it for multiple years were graduating with honors, often the first in their families to go to college, with some attending schools like Harvard and Stanford. In a study released in March 2022, Margaret Martin, the public health scholar who created the program, and a team of researchers compared groups of Harmony students and non-Harmony students in 5 high-poverty Title I elementary schools across Los Angeles. The results were exceptional. Harmony Project students vastly outperformed the non-musician control group on standardized tests, with a 17-point gain in math and a 26-point gain in English. Students who started with the lowest achievement levels gained the most, an average of 33 points in math and 39 points in English. So anyone who thinks music is superfluous to learning, think again. Thank you for being with us this week.